not store up for yourselves treasures on earth, where moth and rust consume, and where thieves break in and steal. But store up for yourselves treasures in heaven, where neither moth nor rust consumes, and where thieves do not break in and steal. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. This is the word of the Lord. Well, we're coming into pledge season or stewardship at Lake Murray Presbyterian Church, and one of my elders long ago taught me that when he hears the word stewardship, he hears, "Hold on to my wallet." I'm hoping this morning you'll hear something far more valuable to you. On that point of stewardship, you should have received a packet of information in the mail this week. And if you didn't, if you'd let us know, we want to address that and make sure all of our systems are right or the address is correct. You should get an electronic version as well. And we're asking everyone to submit a pledge card after some reflection that on the 24th of November. Now, none of the officers and I won't actually see that pledge card. It is really an act of dedication for you. The bookkeeper will. They at least the dollar figure amount. But we're asking everyone in the church, we're hoping that everyone in the church will find at least one place to identify where you're involved in the ministry and the mission of the church. We want every member of the church to know the place they've picked out or been called to serve one another and the world around us. Now, many of you have a long list, and that's wonderful. The goal of this is to try to recruit everyone. And then the elders will take that information and reach out and make sure you have a chance to serve. But stewardship in the church is not merely volunteer recruitment. It's not simply fundraising. And a sermon certainly isn't to be focused on those things. And I was thinking, what do I want to make sure in the sermon you hear, as you hear about stewardship, what do you hear? That you hear the gospel of Jesus Christ. Anytime you hear a sermon, it's a good question to ask, to take away. What was the gospel that I heard today? And the gospel I heard, you'll hear this, if nothing else, that you'll hear clearly, is that Jesus is the treasure of heaven. And God the Father has put his Son, the treasure of heaven, with creation. God has put the treasure of heaven with people. God has put the treasure of heaven with you. The title of my sermon this morning is a terrible pun, which means I love it. Your treasure and your treasure. That you are something that God treasures. And we can see this in our passage this morning. It's what Jesus is driving at. He tells us, don't put your treasure in places where it will be corrupted, where it will be destroyed. And the first thing that shows us is when we think about our treasure, our money, the even more limited resource, time, our abilities. When we think about those things, when we make plans, when we fail to make plans, we are dealing with our values. I heard a story of a woman who she and her husband brought her family to the United States for a vacation to go to Disney World. It's a big trip and a big gift for them. They really wanted to let their kids enjoy that experience. It is a lot of fun. I'm sure many of us have been. While she was there, she heard another mom, an American mom, and the child talking. And the little boy said, "Mommy, can I have this toy?" And the mom said to her, "Well, son, you have $20 to spend today. And you told me you wanted to go to the magic shop. If you buy this toy, will you have money to go to the magic shop later?" Well, the first mom really wondered, why was they obviously had the money from what she was wearing and having being there at all. She was wondering, if she was honest, why is this mom being so cheap? Let the kid have the toy. But then she realized this mom was trying to use this wonderful experience as a time for this child to learn something of value, to instill a value in this child, to think carefully about what we really want and what we'll really enjoy, what will bring us pleasure in this experience. And the first mom was sharing with her children a sense of generosity. Both of those things care and thoughtfulness, generosity, both of those things are good values. Those parents were emphasizing different things in thinking about money. And Jesus talks directly to us, knowing that when we think about what we treasure, we're talking about values. And he tells us not to put what we value in something that is corruptible, that will break down, that will lose value. Just last Sunday, I was talking to one of the men in the church. He'd been retired for a while, and we were talking about a suit. And he said, I can't remember the last time I wore a dress suit. And in fact, he remembered while he was standing there, he said, in fact, I went to get out my last suit. I was going to give it away to Goodwill, and the moths had eaten it, and it wasn't even worth giving away. It had no value at all. Or I think about, we were going on a camping trip this summer, and we pulled out the big wooden crate that has camping gear in it, and there was some, old food left over, packets of oatmeal, some melted candy bars, and half a bag of rice, and the bugs had gotten into the bag of rice, and no thank you. Boiled or not, that have been destroyed. We can put what we value into things that will break down. Another way to think about that is Jesus is talking to us about our hope. He's talking about hope when he reflects on what to do with money or time or ability. And he is warning us, he is cautioning us not to put our hope in things that are corrupt. And we can see that's what God has done too. God has put his treasure, Jesus Christ, into something that is eternal. Jesus wants us to put our hope, our treasure into something eternal as well. This is what God has put his treasure into people, into his church, into you. Because through the resurrection of Jesus Christ, you are eternal. And so eternity begins to inform what we do with these abilities, with our treasures, with our time. And Jesus gives us a positive command. He says, store up for yourselves treasures in heaven, where neither moth nor rust consumes, and where thieves do not break in and steal. One of the hard things sometimes with the stories of Jesus in particular, but the words of Jesus, one of the hard things is that we teach them to our children, and we should. And many of us learn them as children, which is a great blessing. But it means that it can be challenging for us to take Jesus' words in a tone and a tenor that is adult and mature. And Jesus is speaking to us as adults in Christ. One of the things to think about from this verse, when he says to put your things into eternity, it raises the question, is Jesus telling us that we cannot use our time or our money on things that maybe seem frivolous? There's an ethicist named Peter Singer, an atheist ethicist. It's probably important to know. And Peter Singer is incredibly serious about not only ethics as a thought process, but in his own life. So much so that he struggled and wrestled and grieved over the thought of spending money for his children's birthday parties because he thought about the children who didn't have enough to eat. And while I honor his seriousness, I think he came to the wrong answer because he missed something. In spending money on our children, whether it's an ice cream cone or a pony ride, something that we might think is frivolous, maybe the ice cream is frivolous, but the time and the connection with children is not frivolous at all, because we're building a relationship that is about eternity and raising children who know how to celebrate things that are joyful and letting them simply experience love. So Jesus is not telling us that we can't celebrate or enjoy things, but he's saying that we should focus our celebration on things that are eternal. It may limit some of our extravagance, but it should build our joy in the people that we know, whether temporary or eternal. Jesus is calling us to use our treasure for people. That's what he's calling us to do. For through the resurrection of Jesus, people are eternal. In thinking about giving in church, it's quite common for people to talk about tithing. So I just want to take a minute and reflect on that in the light of Jesus Christ. If you don't know, tithing is an Old Testament law where from the farm, people would give the first 10% of their harvest to the king and to the temple. It's worth noting that this tithe, this 10%, represents what was needed to keep an army in the field. For every soldier, one soldier, you needed 10 farms to support him. So that's part of where the tithe comes from. And so it was woven into the children of Israel. But of course, as people who come to God through Christ, we're not bound by the Old Testament law, and yet Christians have often used tithing as a useful guide in their giving. Notice that it's not a gauge. It doesn't measure the quality of our faith. It's simply a guide for us, something to commend to us. And giving by percentage is a useful way. It's helpful, if nothing else. When you have a lean month, you don't have to worry about giving as much. And when you have a good month or year or decade, it allows you to recognize what God has given to you and to celebrate the abundance that you have. Last thing about tithing. Here's an interesting question. Why only 10%? Now, some of us are thinking, boy, I can't even imagine getting there. Fine, that's well enough. But for some of us, we are blessed enough to think, I really don't need to live on everything that God brings my way. I can enjoy it by sending it out into things that will be of eternity. That's what the kind of thinking Jesus is calling us to. Jesus is calling for us to put our treasure into the kingdom of heaven by sharing it with other people. And of course, this is the practice of Lake Murray Presbyterian churches all around the world. We've seen it in just the last few weeks. After Hurricane Helene poured into Asheville, North Carolina, we have managed to fill the space in our fellowship hall, I think 3 times, with different goods and materials that people needed. And then to take the time to send a group to travel to North Carolina to deliver those goods. That's what it means to take our treasure and put it into the kingdom of heaven, to put it into the lives of people who are in need. But it isn't simply church ministry and church mission. God calls for us to put our treasure into the lives of the people who are close to us. Let me give you an example, risk an example from my own family. You can let me know if this makes sense or not afterwards. Our family this summer took a trip to the Grand Canyon. We camped there. It was amazing. And that's a big trip for our family, in part because there's 6 of us. Anything moving 6 people anywhere is a big deal. And I did struggle a little bit. Should we take this? Is this the right thing for us to do? Well, we got some frequent flyer miles. That made it a lot easier, I'll admit. But then I realized, the stage of my kids, 23, 2 are 20, one who's 17 at the time, we're at the moment where traveling together is fun. And it's going to get harder to get everybody together. One's going to finish graduate school. See, got a pretty serious sweetheart. We can see what that turns into over across the horizon. It's going to get harder and harder for us to get the family together. And so we took some of our resources to make sure that we got together, not just on a weekend or for a meal, but to have this amazing experience together to see the Grand Canyon. By the way, it is grand. And so we built this family memory with some of our treasure. A time that I believe that our children will remember even after we're gone. We were putting treasure into one another. Them helping set up the trip and tents and meals. Us with the underwriting of the travel. Putting our treasure into the kingdom of heaven means putting our treasure into other people. People you love. People who you want them to know that you love them, and they want to know, like, you know they love you too. Let me give you one more possible example. And this is particularly for the younger people. It comes from my kids again. I try to limit the kid illustrations, but this was pretty good. They were traveling, and one of them, I'm very proud of this child, said, should we get a little gift in this park for our grandparents? And I said, well, you could, but I tell you what, you should give them the one thing they can't get for themselves. When y'all are out having fun at the park, take a picture on your phone and text it to them. I promise you, it's what they would like to have from you most of all, from a nice trip. They don't need another coffee mug, but a picture of you enjoying a trip, you remembering them and want to be connected, is a valuable gift. It is putting something you treasure into their lives. And I will tell you, young folks, the next time you're out with your friends or with brothers or sisters or cousins or wherever it is, out having fun in the world, take a picture of it, particularly if you're already taking a picture of it. And unasked, share it with grandparents if you still are blessed to have them. Share it with parents. It'll be fun to surprise them, and it will mean more to them than you know, because you are putting your time and your thought into them. That's what it means to take our treasure and put it into the kingdom of heaven, is to put it into other people. One last illustration to think about is money. How does it work when we give money? Here's an illustration from our life together as a church. We're currently supporting the construction of some doctors' housing in Nkoma, Malawi. And the way that this works is quite remarkable. Money, we're not the only ones, of course, but we send money there. And the first thing that happens is that money is used to pay very poor people to make bricks. These are people who would have no work, and now they have some work. Then skilled artisans are paid to take those bricks and build the residence for the doctor. And they earn a wage by which they can truly support a family and send a child to school. Finally, the house that they build provides a residence for a doctor, not simply to treat other people, but to train other doctors to work in an ICU. Malawi only has one ICU and no program to train ICU doctors. And the building of that house is to house doctors, to train other doctors to work in the ICU. We're taking treasure and putting it into the kingdom of heaven, and it turns over and over again, blessing countless people. Jesus finishes this piece of his sermon by telling us, where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. Your treasure, your time, your ability, your money, your wisdom is a way to put your heart into something, into someone eternal. There's a sort of negative corollary to this, and I see it from time to time over the years as a pastor. Someone will become upset or angry with the church. Usually won't say it directly, usually just talking to the poor bookkeeper and say, I want to withdraw my pledge from the church. And obviously that's bad for the budget of the church, but what's heartbreaking about it, and I think so often they don't know, is it means that they're pulling their heart out of the church with their treasure. The positive side, again, you can intend and plan to put your heart somewhere by planning to put your treasure there too. And remember, above all, God has given you, Jesus Christ, the treasure of heaven. God has put his heart into you. The Reverend Taylor Smith tells a wonderful story of a businessman who dealt in fine pearls. He was always on the lookout for great pearls, for good pearls. And one day, he found the perfect pearl. And he said to the man who had this pearl, he said, "What do I need to give you for this perfect pearl?" It was perfect in color and proportion and in size. Everything about it was just perfect. And he said, "Well, what do you have?" And the guy pulled out his wallet and he said, "Oh, I have $347. I'll take that." "What else do you have?" The guy said, "Well, I've got a pretty nice car outside. It's paid for, and just put new tires on it. It's in good shape. The guy says, "Okay, I'll take that." "What else do you have?" He says, "Well, I'm in the jewelry business, so I have a nice watch." He said, "I'll take that, and I'll take your wedding band, too, while you're at it." And the man says, "Okay, it's the perfect pearl." And the man selling the pearl says, "What are you good at?" Man thinks for a minute, and he says, "Well, I'm a good businessman. I built this business from scratch. I'm very capable. I know how to negotiate. I know how to honor my word. I'll take that as part of your payment." "What else are you good at?" "Well, I'm actually a pretty good piano player, too. I'll take that ability as well." "What else is important to you?" And he said, "Well, of course, my wife and my children. I'll take that as well." "I'm healthy. I'll take that as well." And he hands him the pearl worth so much, the perfect pearl. He's a little stunned, about ready to walk out of the store, and the merchant who had the pearl says, "Wait a minute. I tell you what, you bought the pearl, but what I want to do is I want to hand all of these things back to you. $357, the car, your watch, your wedding band, here's your piano skill, here's your business skill, here's your health, here's your wife and family. I want you to use them well, to manage them, to love them, the people, not the things. Knowing that really they belong to me, but you are going to use them and keep the pearl of great price." Now, here's the thing about that story. You've probably guessed this is a story that Jesus told. And all the great stories, particularly Jesus' story, mean more than one thing at the same time. That story is a lovely story about our stewardship. But when Jesus tells the story, he says the kingdom of heaven is like a man who found the perfect pearl and paid everything for it. Brothers and sisters, you are the pearl of great price. You are the thing, the one for whom God has given everything, the treasure of heaven, to win you to himself. God has poured his heart into you. Receive that love, if nothing else, this day. All glory be to God, the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Amen.